everybody, Mr. Doug Bradley. Thank you so much. All right, you go ahead and...
You look as though you're about to do the Bible reading.
I know, I'm going to come in and have a speech. You should vote for me and Doug for office, right?
The Gospel according to Pinhead.
There you go, there you go.
Hi.
Yes. And much like other religions, he needs money, so. And I have the greatest pleasure here for our first time, to have Ashley Laurence come join us. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you. And as I mentioned before, I just want to do a quick rewind. In 2015, Doug was here. He was famously wearing a.
I was in that weird building.
Yes, it was a very round hotel where you walked in circles and circles and.
No, it wasn't even a hotel. It was some kind of weird civic building full of mirrors.
Well, yes, that was
was it?
the first. Isn't it a hotel? A Matrix Conference Center.
Right.
Okay.
It was one of the strangest buildings I've ever been in. It's very strange. But the show was very good. Lots of
Yes.
people.
You guys can't see this, but there's like cat hair just right here.
Wait, do we have a
Was
dog
there
here?
Dog hair? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Because I was like,
Yes, the last panel. That's right. She had a little dog with her.
oh, okay.
Okay. As you do.
I just wanted to double check, Doug. You had, I believe it was a "fuck remakes" shirt. Is that still
I had a what?
the T-shirt? Said "fuck remakes" or "fuck remakes"? I think that was the first time. We're still there.
I like to think it was slightly more subtle than fuck remakes.
Okay.
What it actually said was, Pinhead says, "No remakes, please. It's a waste of good celluloid."
We're still there. How do you feel on the remakes and the remakes and?
I think everything ends up being a remake at one point or another, so it's just alchemy. I think it's okay.
All right, excellent.
And that was not specifically aimed at Hellraiser remakes, I should say, and was no longer for sale long before the Hulu Razor remake came along, and it was not specifically aimed at the idea of a Hellraiser remake, but it was aimed more particularly at the whole culture of remakes.
Yes.
Which I'm not a fan of. I mean, I'm aware. I cut my teeth on Hammer movies when they were being shown on UK television in the early 1970s. That was kind of my grounding in horror, and I'm aware that that Hammer were remaking the classic Universal movies with
Correct.
in fact only like something like a 20-year gap. Between them, but I just think for executives it's lazy to take a ride on somebody else's work.
An IP, right?
When I think their job should be finding the new Clive Barkers and Sam Raimis and Wes Cravens and but that's just my opinion.
Yes. Well, give him a round of applause. I agree. And to your point, Ashley, I think. Yes, there's concepts and ideas, but to Doug's point, do we need the exact same thing?
Well, I think that came out. There were like two Lambada, the Forbidden Dances, at the same time. Was that what it was? Do you remember
The
that?
what?
It was called Lambada, the Forbidden Dance.
Well, yeah. All right.
I vaguely do. I can't say I ever danced one.
I watched both.
Did you?
Well,
Right.
there you go. Well, they gotcha.
But I did just watch, and I was greatly surprised by it. I had this conversation with someone at my table. I'm a huge fan of the original of The Omen. Big fan of that movie. And I saw the first Omen on Hulu, and I thought, a Hulu original prequel to The Omen? I don't have high expectations of this. I thought it was really good, really, really good. I was so surprised. It's very strong, very powerful, really well acted, great score. Arkasha Stevenson, I think, is the director. Her featured debut, and I think she's done a remarkable job. It feeds perfectly into the beginning of The Omen in the hospital in Rome with the babies being switched, and manages to set itself up, in theory at least, for its own sequel.
Yeah, further sequel, yeah.
Because Damon has a twin sister.
Everybody, don't tell anybody.
Yes. I let out a spoiler.
Well, that's it's good to know. It's rare.
It's good. Worth a look.
So, Ashley, I was reading your opening to the, I think it was the 20th anniversary of the Hellbound Heart. And you had mentioned how, it's kind of the last second they found you and you were perfect. And you mentioned within days, you were flewn over and you two had your time together. I wondered if you wanted to talk about...
I screen tested her.
Yes. So I wondered if you want to talk about you starting out, and you had already had some theatrical experience, et cetera, and so Clive came in and said, "This is the one," or is...
I don't remember him saying that. He just asked me if I would come in and screen test.
Yes.
Well, we did. I played Andy Robinson's
Like my
part
dad
in the Chinese restaurant, and I decided I was going to learn my lines rather than just read off a script.
I know.
And I dried, which is, what do American actors say?
Go up.
Go up. I went up. I forgot my lines. I forgot what I was supposed to be saying. And I felt like a complete idiot. And we
Helped
did
get
something
that part.
else,
It was
didn't we?
really good. Yeah, we did the when you show up, the no, what the heck's going on kind of thing.
Right,
It's
okay.
just a puzzle
Right,
box.
right.
And then, he was my dad.
Yes.
Well, see, so you said that. So you said in your story that he was the most professional and amazing. And
Yeah, you helped me get that part.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I paid Clive.
Cool.
I screen tested Claire Higgins as well.
As what role were you in that?
I played the businessman with the weak bladder, and it nearly came to a sticky end.
No.
They set it up. Well, first of all, we waited a while. Claire was meditating in her dressing room, we were told. Claire came out, and we were introduced, and I looked into her eyes, and I thought, I don't think we need to bother with a screen test. She is scaring me just looking at me. So they'd set up a big foam block on the wall of the soundstage. So the action is very simple, and it's nothing to do with me, obviously. I walk in, and I say, "Oh, I need to, where?" And she tells me where. She's turned round. The camera's all on her. I turn towards the camera to leave. I duck out of frame. She will then swing the hammer and hit the block of foam. So I did my thing, turned round, dropped out of frame. I hear thwack. There's a long pause, and a slightly worried voice said, "Cut." And I'm down on the ground on my hands and knees. I got up, and I'm waiting to hear something. And I said, "Oh, are we doing that again?" And Selwyn Roberts, the first AD on Hellraiser, said, "No." And he said to me, "She missed you by that much. She was not waiting for you to get out of the way." So it's always amused me that Claire and I might have ended up as footnotes to the history of horror. So when Hellraiser is mentioned in the books, there'd be an asterisk and a footnote explaining that that Doug Bradley, an actor who had worked for a long time with Clive Barker, was supposed to play the role of Pinhead, but was unable to because he was killed in a freak
in
accident while screen testing Claire Higgins, who was then unable to play the part of Julia because she was in jail for manslaughter.
Wow. Well, so she was ready when the time came to.
So if
to
anyone
be,
asks you to screen test for anybody, say no. Okay?
All right. So I know it was a very short time in between. So Clive's first movie, people were happy about it. Then it came out and it was a monstrous hit. So what was the call? Was it from the company to say, "Oh my God, we have to turn around and crank one out right away"? Because it was very short time.
It was. That actually, the noises about that started to happen while we were filming Hellraiser.
Oh, okay.
The dailies were making their way back to LA. They were not initially too happy about what they were seeing.
Well, we
Tony,
had to reshoot a bunch of stuff too.
Right.
Because things that, like, there's a scene where I answer the phone, I call my dad and he answers in the middle of the night because I had a bad dream, and the flat I had a fireplace, and in the UK that meant you couldn't afford heat, but in California it meant that you're like posh, so they had to reshoot stuff like that. Which
there was quite a lot, yes, because if have you all read The Hellbound Heart?
Mm-hmm.
I've signed plenty of them, so
Yes.
I would expect you have, which I feel slightly guilty about. Sorry, Clive. But so you'll be aware that The Hellbound Heart is set in London,
100%.
right?
No ambiguous.
And Clive adapts The Hellbound Heart as Hellraiser. And Hellraiser was written to take place in London. And when we started filming Hellraiser, it was being filmed as though we were in London. There's that example that Ashley's given you, but also the conversation right at the beginning when Julia and Larry come into the house, it makes sense specifically about them having left Manhattan and come to London, because it's Julia's family home, and she's back on her old turf as an English woman. So do you think we might be in England? Maybe. And in particular, my favorite is the scene in the station between Kirsty and her boyfriend, which, if you look closely, right at the beginning, features a British Rail 125 Express thundering through the station. And then there's the intriguing exchange when your boyfriend tries to kiss you and you say,
That
no.
was the Debbie Gibson hat. He found it fetching.
And you say, I was warned about you English guys or British guys.
Yeah.
Especially, apparently, you English guys with American accents.
Yes.
Overdubbed.
With sketchy American accents.
But that's because the call had come from New World midway through filming Hellraiser. We want a sequel. We want it to start as soon as Hellraiser finishes. I don't mean in real time. I mean, we want the story to pick up from exactly where the story of Hellraiser ends with Kirsty in hospital, and we want it to take place in America. So now
So
there's
you go back
backfilling
and-
going on all over the place to try and make sense of this movie written to take place in London and being shot to take place in London. So Kirsty's boyfriend acquires an American accent.
Yeah.
As do the movers and everybody.
The New York hat on the guy.
Yes.
Yes.
Passed
Yes.
out, yeah.
With one exception, which leads, I've always said, to by far and away the greatest perversion in Hellraiser, which is, God knows, a movie not short on perversion. And this is a very, very, to use the old-fashioned sense of the word, nice piece of perversity that not even Pinhead could have come up with, which is that Julia goes out to trawl the bars and clubs of this unnamed American city, but not anywhere but New York. Not just looking for businessmen to bring home to beat their brains out and feed their blood to her skinless lover.
As you do. As you do.
As you do. As you do. I frequently do. Don't you?
Well,
Oh,
you know.
Okay, sorry. She goes looking for balding English businessmen
Yes.
in the bars of this unnamed American city
Yes. Yes.
to bring home. Because for some reason, they did not acquire American accents.
Yeah.
They retained their British accents.
That's interesting.
So-
And there's all the shots of you on the shore, or not the shore, but the loading docks, et cetera.
That was our first shot.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
my first-
And it's distinctly, that's not New York by any
Right.
stretch.
That was
but-
great, though.
Yeah,
Because
it's
the
beautiful.
wind
Where
and
was that?
everything.
Isle of Dogs, was it? Canary Wharf,
Yeah.
maybe?
I think so. That
Yes.
sounds familiar. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yes. And so you had a little bit of reverse. So in that second film, you had to step into the makeup chair to have your skin. And
Well, that was
your
just
utility.
one, that was one
Oh,
day, but
so-
they covered, me. I think it was Caro syrup and coffee and food coloring. So they doused me and then they broke for lunch. So I couldn't sit, so I'm just sort of waiting, and the Caro syrup started to condense, so it would pull all the little hairs off, and I couldn't regulate my heat because they forgot to leave a patch. So I was
Oh.
just like shivering in the sticky stuff. I turned into like a candy apple, basically.
Yes.
But I didn't mind. It was kind of fun, you know.
All right.
Yeah.
And then you had the plastic skin over, or when
Well,
you peeled?
yeah,
or?
I mean, it was just a really tiny, it was mostly Claire, actually, so.
Well, yes, when she was- yep.
I know, psych. She,
Movie
so
magic.
she pulled it.
Yes. Okay.
I didn't really have it on me.
I see. So then you just come in
Yeah,
bloody.
she actually
Okay.
had to wear the glue.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I was just sticky.
Okay. Good. So how did you guys? I'm a monstrous Clive Barker fan. So how did you guys feel that somebody was immediately running with his vision? I think the second one was the only one he even kind of gave a nod to. I know he's officially an executive producer on all the sequels, but because he started it. But is
Well, Hellbound is his storyline. Pete Atkins wrote the screenplay, but it was Clive's storyline, and he was executive director. And he was around
Yeah.
all the time, is my memory.
Okay.
Around a lot. Talking to Tony. Hellraiser 3, he was not going to be involved in at all, because New World had produced Hellraiser and Hellbound and then went belly up. So we now have a legal conundrum, which is that New World own the rights to Hellraiser because Clive, like all self-respecting first-time movie makers, had given away everything to New World, apart from the literary rights, which obviously he retained, but everything else had gone to New World. Strictly speaking, the rights would have automatically reverted to Clive as the primary creator. And that's certainly what Clive was assuming. And then a guy emerged from the wreckage of New World waving a piece of paper that he said proved that he now held the rights. I had a phone call with Clive in which he basically said to me, look, Hellraiser 3 is going to go ahead and I'm not going to be involved, and this is the reason. He's an entertainment lawyer and he can afford all the best entertainment lawyers in Hollywood, and I can't, and I'd be a fool to try and fight him. So Hellraiser 3 is going ahead, but please, with my blessing, take
Go
it,
ahead.
go, run. He came back in at the end because it was at the end of Hellraiser 3 that Miramax went shopping for a horror franchise, and they found Hellraiser and Children of the Corn, and bought both of them and created Dimension Films, which subsequently produced the remaining Hellraiser movies. So when they came in, they said that they wanted to market the movie as Clive Barker Presents. And so obviously they were going to have to pay Clive to do that. And he said, that's fine, but I want to see what I'm putting my name to. You didn't have to. You could just have taken the check and gone to the bank. But he said, I want to see what I'm putting my name to. And he wanted some changes made, not too many. So we did reshoots in LA, which Tony Hickox was still directing, but Clive was around for those. Hellbound, then, Hellbound, I don't mean Hellbound, sorry, Bloodline, the fourth movie.
Yes.
Again, that was his storyline. Pete Atkins writing the screenplay again, and Clive executive producing. So he remained involved really up to the end of Bloodline. Inferno forward, he had nothing to do with any of the movies thereafter.
So then both of you, when you got the call, now it's an acting job. Just okay, I'll take that up. And
It was always a bit more than just an acting job. I mean, it's that, sure.
yes,
It's work.
But
It's
still the character
money.
he-
Bills get paid.
yes,
et
of
cetera.
course, the characters are yours all the way. And when you came back, Ashley,
Oh,
eventually,
he
right?
called me
Oh,
at home because there was, go ahead.
They sent me. So this is Hellseeker we're talking about now, which is the sixth
Yep.
movie. They sent me the script, and I started reading it, and I see immediately Kirsty, and I thought, "You shitting me? They're bringing Kirsty back." Oh wait, oh this isn't Kirsty, and I thought this is weird. You can't do this. You can, but it seems strange to me unless you're making some kind of a point out of it. To name a character in a sequel after a principal character in the original movie and its first sequel, that just seemed odd.
yes.
And she had a dog called Cotton, which was Kirsty's last name.
Yes,
and I
of
thought,
course.
okay, all right. How
It's not
self...
like people are high-fiving in like the writer's room.
Great, good idea.
And then there's half of them like, what are you talking about? I don't know.
Now, as always, Dimension would not let me talk to the director, Rick Boter, who was
Lovely.
directing Hellseeker. They wouldn't let me talk to him until my deal was done, and as always, they were finicky and bits and pieces were always going on. So it's quite late in the day that my deal is finally done, and Rick and I get to talk on the phone, and I said to him, you know, when I read the screenplay and this, and he said, you know, I thought the same thing. And I said, I thought you were going to bring Kirsty back, which would have been cool. And he said, wouldn't it? I'd love to do that. And we tried.
Okay.
I said, what, you sent it to Ashley and she turned it down? No, we haven't been able to talk to Ashley. We haven't been able to get past her agents. They were obviously protecting
Not
you.
the same
from,
ones.
And I said, oh, that's weird. Do you want me to call her? And Rick said, would you? And I said, sure. So I did. And, you know, when she'd finished screaming, she said yes.
Excellent, excellent.
Well, we didn't know about the ending because I didn't feel like she would have done that. So they were like, just come out, we'll figure it out. So I remember the night before, we're eating sushi and drinking sake, and I'm like, what are we gonna do? They're like, well, make it a dream. Okay. So all
The
of
perfect Hollywood
that,
ending.
I know, right? But so everything she does is just, I guess, his dream? I'm not sure. But I got to swim
Yeah.
with frogmen. That was amazing on my first day because they had a giant pool.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 2 frogmen, and I just dove in and got to swim for hours. And that
Oh,
was
well, that's
very,
great.
very
There you
cool.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it was late enough in the piece that I remember when you arrived
Yeah.
in Vancouver and came to set. I think you just got off the plane,
Yeah,
had you?
I
And you'd
went
just
straight.
come. Rick and I were sitting on set, still trying to work out how the fuck to make sense of this actually being that Kirsty rather
Right.
than any old Kirsty. So it was late in the piece. At the scene of our confrontation, I wrote.
No.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in there that didn't
Yes.
It's on the, it's
Well,
still on the DVD,
so
yeah?
I'm
Blu-ray?
I'm sitting in the makeup trailer, having the Pinhead makeup applied, and with a notepad, and I'm scribbling things down, and a PA is taking them from me onto set to show to Rick, and he's sending them back with notes saying, "Love this, not this, change this, this is okay," blah blah. The big point of contention between us was that he was absolutely adamant that we could not make reference back to what had happened in Hellraiser, because this had to be a standalone movie. There had to be no sense, if people came to see Hellseeker, that you needed to have seen Hellraiser and Hellbound to understand what was going on between Pinhead and Kirsty. And I said, I understand that, I get that, but this is ridiculous. You can't bring Kirsty and Pinhead back face to face. But the whole point is here that Pinhead made a deal with this bitch in the first movie
We talked about it in therapy.
that she completely reneged on.
Yes,
And
yes.
he's never quite gotten over it. So
He needs to let go.
I don't think Pinhead would. I don't think Pinhead would.
trust me, Pinhead's not the let him go kind.
He'll come back later, like the mafia.
And therapy never goes well with Pinhead.
It's no one's fault.
Many have tried, few have survived. But he let me write it anyway. And then I remember when we filmed it, I thought, this is kind of odd. He doesn't shoot scenes like this. It was what I call Wimbledon editing. So it's all on me, it's all on you, which means you can, it's that editing. And I walked off set and I thought, the fuck, I've given you your edit.
Yeah.
Because you can, if you can find an answer that makes sense to a question, you can take the middle of the scene out.
Yeah. So there's
And I
no
went-
master shot. It's
I went,
just
yeah.
close-ups.
I went, well, and the master, maybe they shot a master, it doesn't matter, you don't need to use it, or you can only use a bit of it, the beginning and the end. Once you're Wimbledoning, you can edit that scene any way you want.
Okay.
And I went straight up to him and I said, you fucker, I've just given you your cut. And he just went, maybe. And it's exactly what he did. But to his credit, he in the special extra bits on the DVD, he acknowledged that and included the whole scene
so good.
unedited
Yeah.
in the in the.
Well, that was great. So
Really
everybody head back. Check that out.
Yeah, do. It's really good.
All right. So at this point, thank you both. I'd like to open it up to the floor. So we have any questions? We have decent acoustics, so if somebody just wants to stand up, if anybody, all right, come on.
Oh, ask things.
Yeah, please, stand up.
So you have a rather nice, pleasant speaking voice. How did you?
Who?
Yeah, who are you?
I'm sorry. I mean, both of you.
Thank you.
Mostly done.
Oh, Ashley's voice is great. Everybody's.
Whatever.
Okay.
We're good.
Was there a journey you went through to arrive at Pinhead's voice? And if so, what was that like? If you want to segue into talking about the Cradle of Filth thing that happened, you can do that too.
Okay. What if I don't want to?
No.
Okay.
You are free not to, sir.
Well, I had read The Hellbound Heart before I had the screenplay for Hellraiser. Now, so in The Hellbound Heart, Clive describes the Pinhead. Well, he describes the Pinhead Cenobite almost exactly as you see him on film. It's tattoos, I think, not scars, but he describes a gridiron pattern, and he says at every intersection of vertical and horizontal axes, a jeweled pin had been driven through to the bone. Its tongue was similarly decorated, he says. And he says specifically, relevant to the Hulu remake, I guess, Frank had difficulty guessing the speaker's gender, let alone its identity. There's no name. When he speaks, obviously the pins in the tongue, on the tongue had to go, because, I'll fall apart. Would have been what you would have heard. He also had bells sewn into the flesh around the back of his neck, which is a wonderful idea, but again, practically speaking, on a film set, it would have meant that it would have sounded like jingle bells every time I moved anywhere.
You're like calling a cat.
So yes. Pinhead coming through the cat flap, yes.
We have a cat over there, that's what it's called.
Meow.
There's a voice.
Where were we?
That'd be so good.
Yes, and then he says, its voice was light and breathy, like that of an excited girl. What were you laughing at? You think I don't sound like an excited girl?
Well,
I like to think I do. I played around with that with the screenplay. I couldn't make any sense of that without sounding, frankly, stupid. So I didn't. I had a voice that I'd heard in my head, but here's the thing. I remember not knowing, and so I assume this must mean that I had not had this conversation with anybody, feeling terribly insecure because I didn't know whether they wanted a British accent, an American accent. Were they even going to use my voice? Or were they going to get a voiceover artist to dub it later? Which would have been an easy route for them to take, by the way. Put extras in all that makeup and costume, and then get a voiceover artist to do what you want after it. I didn't know what the answer to those questions were. Actors' insecurities, bleeding all over the place for me doing that first bit, so I just went with the voice I heard in my head. That was it.
excellent.
Cradle of Filth, I'm a major disappointment to all my fans because I hate heavy metal. But I knew Danny. I'd met him a couple of times. And I really hugely admire Danny. Everything he puts together with the whole look of Cradle, and I think he's a really clever writer. So they did an album called Midian, which was his tribute to Nightbreed. And he'd just done an album called Cruelty and the Beast, which featured Ingrid Pitt doing voice work on the album. So I just got a call, would you? And I said, sure. I ended up doing 5 albums with them, including the most recent one. That I told Danny I think they should change their name to Doug Bradley and Cradle of Filth. Clearly, at this point, they're just really my backing band. So.
There you go. There you go.
But it was very cool, and Danny's very funny. He's an amazing performer, too. I've seen Cradle live. He's tiny, and he's slight. He doesn't have a big barrel chest to produce that voice out of, or those voices, because he has the basso profundo voice and the falsetto voice, and he switches between the two. When I saw them live, it was in Baltimore. It was penultimate night of their tour. They were finishing in New York the following night, and the voice was pristine. And I really don't know how he does that. I mean, it's diaphragm work and head voice understanding and not sitting it in the throat, as most of us would if we tried that. But he has to be doing that to the nth degree. I tried to talk to him about that, to try and tease out some trade secrets from him, but he clammed up, wouldn't tell me anything. I think I understand it. You get trained as an actor for that. If you work off your diaphragm, particularly in the theater, you will, if you're doing it properly, you'll have the feeling that your voice is being spoken here, not here. And there's a difference. British actors are taught very much to speak at the front of their mouth. Noel Coward. It's all tongue and teeth, darling. It's all this, tonight, today, da-da, what to do, to die today, at a minute or two to two. It's all of that. Do you understand? As opposed to you, American actors who all talk down in your throat here, like this, you know. Everybody talks here most of the time, you know, those American voices. But I'm always so in awe. You know, just keep talking to me. Where is that? What's going on in that echo chamber down there? So I think that's what he's doing. He's, you know, the voice is projected out and not coming through his throat. Sorry, long answer.
That's good. All right, you have a question? Okay.
So, for both of you, when going over, I know you read the Hellbound Heart. When going over the script for the first Hellraiser film, were your views on horror changed when you not only got to know Clive Barker's style, but your characters in general? And specifically for Doug, did you ever get a rematch for that chess game with Lemmy Kilmister?
You go first.
So can you reiterate what you mean?
You don't have to talk about chess games.
No,
No.
I'll explain.
I don't.
Yes.
You
No.
do it.
No, well, you
So-
answer the first.
So he's asking if working on the first film changed your outlook to horror.
To horror film?
Yes.
I didn't think of it as a horror film. I just thought it was kind of a love story and a story about family.
Even though your uncle is trying to,
To have sex with me and kill
yes,
me.
yes, yes.
Not in that order?
Yeah.
I didn't really question it, and I didn't think of it as genre specific. It just seemed, it made sense to me. So there wasn't a difference in that. But his script, every character spoke with a different cadence. Everyone had different goals and feelings and agendas. Like, there was so much diversity with all of the characters and each of their journeys that the first time you looked into the puzzle box, they were undulating bodies. That's how he described it. So everything was exquisite. So there wasn't, oh, this is horror. It all made perfect sense to me. I never questioned it. So.
Well, a lot of you will be aware that Clive and I go back a way. We've known each other for coming up. It's more than 50 years. I first encountered him when I went to rehearsals for the school play at high school in Liverpool in, I want to say, 1969. And that was when I was aware of him in school. You couldn't not be aware of Clive. But this flamboyant, funny, witty, crazy, larger-than-life character, that was the day that changed my life when I went to that rehearsal room at high school. So, and then we worked together in theatre, all of which Clive was writing through the 70s and into the early 80s. We had our own theatre company, which only disbanded like 4 years before Hellraiser. And Clive, at that point, as the theatre company was coming to an end, he kept giving me plastic shopping bags. He carried his world in plastic shopping bags, and he said, "There's some manuscripts in there, short stories. Have a read. Tell me what you think. I'm trying to write some short horror stories to see if I can make some money." They were the stories that went into Books of Blood, and the money bit worked. So I'd had a ringside seat and been personally involved in Clive's work for a very, very long time. I was deeply immersed in it. What struck me, and people, particularly if you're familiar with, I think, the Books of Blood, you'll be aware that Clive's style is naturally poetic. It's not necessarily, I don't mean overblown, it's not highfalutin, but his style is naturally poetic, even when he writes in a more prosaic way. It's naturally poetic. What struck me with the screenplay, I was quietly amused the way that it seemed to me he was writing down. He was writing in a lot of movie-ese, simple movie parlance, which was the requirements. And Ashley's absolutely right that within that he was still finding, very, very different voices for Julia rather than Larry and Frank, and etc. And then in the screenplay, I came to Pinhead, and it almost felt like I could hear Clive going, thank fuck. And letting the handbrake off, and everything went poof. Because this is language that, no one else in the movie is talking like this. No one else. Which gives me an advantage.
Yes.
So, did it change the way I looked at horror? I find that hard to answer, really, because the answer is no, because we had always dissected horror. We went to every new movie that came out, but you didn't just go and see a movie with Clive and come out and say, what did you think? I thought it sucked, yeah. Or I thought it was okay. It was, you talked for hours about that movie afterwards, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. You turned it inside out and pulled every last bit of flesh and bone out of it.
Literally.
Which was what Clive did, and he did. He digested everything, and then everything came back out again. Eventually, the bits that he wanted to use, and I think a lot of the principal motivators for Clive in Hellraiser is nothing to do with horror cinema. It's fundamentally two stories. Huge impact on Clive. Paradise Lost. John Milton's Paradise Lost. He says in the introduction to that, I'm, with apologies to the great Mr. Milton, I will be paraphrasing, but something to the effect that the mind is a place entire unto itself and can make a heaven of a hell and a hell of heaven. And I think that's fundamental to Hellraiser. And Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus.
Yes.
It's the Faustian bargain. In the play, Faustus has studied everything. He studied the physical sciences, metaphysical sciences, literature, philosophy, theology, everything. And he says, it's still not enough. I don't have the answers to what I want. I want more. And Mephistopheles turns up and says, I can give you that for a price, which is your soul, but I can do that for you. And that's at the heart. Clive actually puts that thought into Frank's mouth. It's never enough. It's never enough. It's very particularly sexual, obviously, with Frank, but that's there. And the puzzle box and the intermediary kind of stand in for Mephistopheles. So it's much bigger picture. The other thing I've always said is that the genius of what Clive does with Hellraiser is it's basically a straightforward 1980s slasher movie. Take the Cenobites and the puzzle box out altogether. Forget they exist. That basic story is rock solid, and it survives, which is Julia and Larry and Frank, and Julia and Frank's relationship, Kirsty's questionable relationship to her
Family
father.
film.
Find a different way for Frank to die, but that's not difficult. Frank dies, he bleeds into the floorboards, he comes back to life. All of that's still there. The businessmen, thwack, blood, boom. Larry Frank in Larry's skin, that's all still there. And find a different way for Kirsty to save the day. But that story is absolutely solid, and it's a straightforward, if maybe slightly dull, slasher movie. And then Clive brings this little grain of pure Gothic horror, the Cenobites and the puzzle box, and just drops it, bang, in the middle, and the whole movie goes boom. goes somewhere else. And I don't think anybody else could have done that.
All right. Well, we're near our end. Do we want to clear up the chess?
So this is, I assume you all know to what is being referred, or not, maybe?
Should we?
It wasn't a game of chess, it was a game of cards. So this is after Hellraiser 3 is released. The original plan was that Hellraiser 3 was going to have a rock score, a rock and roll score. And in fact, I got a phone call from one guy who told me that they were planning to put a Hellraiser Palooza tour together of all the bands that were going to be providing music for Hellraiser 3, which I think was including Nine Inch Nails and certainly Motorhead. And then they changed their minds. But he was basically asking me, would I be interested in joining them on tour as kind of MC for the gigs?
Nice.
Yeah. and then it didn't happen. And the only song that survived was Hellraiser, which plays over the credits at the end of Hellraiser 3, which is actually Ozzy's song. But Ozzy didn't want to record it. Maybe he was trying to, I don't know, live down and something. I don't know why, but he gave it to Lemmy. Motorhead recorded it, and they decided that they wanted to put out a music video to go with it. Lemmy said he would do it if Clive directed it.
Oh.
And Pinhead was in it. Clive said yes, I said yes. So I get flown out to LA, and we I arrived, we were filming in a beautiful condemned old theater in downtown LA. And I arrive in the limo, and I step out, and here's Lemmy pacing up and down the sidewalk, smoking. And I got taken over and introduced to Lemmy. And then I went off to get into makeup and costume, and then we came onto set where we're playing cards. And of course, Lemmy has a particular interest in the ace of spades. Why? I don't know. There was a prop decanter sitting here. Lemmy and I sat and talked. He was wonderful. It's so funny, and we had a shared love of British comedy. So we were trading that round the horn, as you know, stuff that you don't know, as well as Monty Python, and the stuff that you do know, and strictly not Benny Hill, I would add as well. But this decanter is sitting here on the table the whole time, and as we're talking, I can see Lemmy looking at it. Calls his people over and whispers to them. The decanter is taken off the table, and it disappears, and then it comes back, now filled with amber fluid, which Lemmy proceeded to drink like you and I might drink orange juice, while the Dark Pope of Hell demurely sipped his Evian water on the other side of the table. He drank a lot throughout the day. It was just a couple of moments around 11 o'clock at night. He getting up from a chair, there'd be a very slight stagger in his step, but pretty fucking terrifying to think you drink that much to stay sober. Is not clever. But then we all got to sit in the stalls and watch Motorhead play at the end of it. Lemmy won because of the Ace of Spades, of course. So he cheated Pinhead. So, yeah. So, no is the answer. There was never any chance we were going to revisit that, and we can't do that. Well, maybe Lemmy and I will get to do that together one day in the future, someplace that we don't know about.
There you go. Well,
Be cool.
thank you, everybody. We're a little bit past time now, so we're gonna go back down so we can get everybody's signatures as well. But let's get a big round of applause.
Thank
for
you,
everybody.
guys.
Thank you so much.